The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
Lead investigator Sheriff Arpaio, you want to try to answer Shirley's question there, Mike, and then we're up against another hard break, but we got an hour after that.
Yeah, it's going to be a little difficult to answer that because obviously, no matter what the consensus is, whether we all agree that he's illegitimate or not, the fact is he's a sitting United States president, and that's who they have to work with. I can't speak really to that, but what I can tell you is I am very concerned that the way that this has been portrayed to the American people about citizenship, about coming through solely through the mother, I believe you can go back into history and you could find out where they may have that backwards.
Yeah.
And that the citizenship is conferred through the father. And if that is the case, if it's determined later on that that is the case, there is a problem here because even by omission, the man's purported father was not a United States citizen.
That's right. That's right. Even if he is the one, you're right. And you know, something you and I have been emphasizing, even though what you said is true and you need to say that, is that this case that you have before you, this criminal legal case, is not really a birther issue, although that may prove to be a big deal in this. But the issue you have is a fraudulent, forged, fabricated document, a crime, a federal felonious crime has been committed in or and around the White House, and that's what you're proffering to people who have some standing to get something done about it, right?
Well, that's correct. And go one step further. I mean, let's be real about this, Carl. We're looking at probably the greatest fraud ever perpetrated against American people in history.
Yeah.
If not the history, well, I can't say the history of the world because there was worse things done, but this is monumental for this country.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was going to say it is, and it may be in the history of the world as far as a fraud goes, in that we are the number one superpower of the world, the number one superpower in world history. There's never been one that has had this much power and influence and wealth, and for it to be taken perhaps by complete fraud would have to be one of the greatest frauds in world history.
Could very well be.
Yeah.
And what else it does, if I could just real quick, what else it does, it attacks us at our very core foundational principles, that we're a nation of law, not a nation of men. And no one's above the law. It doesn't matter who you are.
Right.
Anybody possessing this document, trying to use this document for gain, would be arrested and prosecuted.
Right.
And as clear cut as that.
Yeah, at a very simple level, if I went and fabricated a birth certificate, put it in multiple layers, and just made it say what I wanted it to say to represent me, Carl Gallups, and if I took that birth certificate and tried to gain employment with it where somebody would pay me, or tried to gain a service that was valuable to me, or tried to represent myself as somebody I wasn't so that I could advance my cause, all of those would be considered crimes. They would be considered felonies. More than likely, I'd wind up in prison. Am I right?
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
So aren't we dealing with the very same thing, except at a much larger scale?
I don't know if there's ever been something as large as this under the fraud statute, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about the most powerful man in the world.
I know. And the bottom line is, as of right now, you're holding in your possession massive files of a almost 2-year criminal investigation proving that the documents are fraudulent. So thus far, all we know is the man in the White House, with the documents he's provided thus far, he is not legally able to be there. He's committed fraud against the American people, right?
That's a little bit of a stretch, Carl, because I don't know if I could say that. What I could tell you is that the document that he presented is not a representation of any official...
There you go.
In any official capacity of where this man was born.
There you go. It's a simple matter. He said the document we have is a false document. It's no good. So all we ask is for the president to bring us forth the original document, the microfilm document, so we can examine it, and we'll clear him. We will clear him, and we will shout it to the world. Mike, that's all you guys have ever wanted is the truth. Am I right? But in the meantime, instead of bringing forth a real document, all you've gotten is further cover-up, further name-calling, crashing websites, obfuscation. I mean, what's up with that? Am I right?
You're 100% right. I mean, the sheriff said it in the very beginning. Just show us the microfilm, and we can make this all go away. The situation that unfolded was something I was never expecting. I've never been part of a disinformation campaign, and I've been educated now on disinformation and disinformation techniques. And one of the paramount things is what happened with the media blackout. You know, if they don't report on it, it didn't happen.
Right.
They keep people in the dark. You know, they use tactics as ridicule. They try to dominate discussions on message boards. They make outrageous comments. They make false accusations. They do a whole host of things trying to sway people from the truth, trying to stop people from looking at that chain of evidence.
Right.
And it's something that I never had this experience with. You know, they'll even go as far as setting up straw men to create like an element of an argument or the opponent's argument that they could easily debunk, and they try to take that to chip away at the truth.
Right.
And their methodology is, if we could, quote, debunk, and that word has been thrown around all over the place.
Right.
People don't know what it really means. If they can debunk one item, something you say, they nullify the whole investigation.
Right.
Well, unfortunately for them, it doesn't work like that.
No, not in a criminal investigation, right?
No, it doesn't work like that. But what's going on now and what's being waged against the American people is techniques being used that are called psyops. And they're psychological operations, and they're used to keep you in the dark. I mean, if you are just a common individual, you don't have to be a law enforcement officer, you don't have to be a professor. If I brought you in and I showed you in layman's terms this document, there is only one conclusion you can come to.
Right.
That this thing was put together piece by piece.
Right.
And they are doing everything they can to nullify it. They'll even go as far as creating their own expert environment.
Right.
Trying to give themselves authority with so-called experts that aren't experts at all.
Right. Right. In fact, they're irrelevant.
They are irrelevant. They're completely irrelevant. The best way you deal with them is to use the same technique that they're using on the American people. Don't talk to them.
Yeah. Just ignore them. And that's what
that's what the White House has really done on this issue.
Right.
They never really addressed this issue. The only time they really addressed this issue is when they came up with the phony document.
Right. Yeah, well, and that's what you and I have been doing, just ignoring them because they are irrelevant. Well, listen, Mike, let's go back to the phone lines. Now, folks, hang on. We've got about 45 minutes of program left, and Mike and I, in just a little bit, we're going to be making some announcements that you've not heard. They're bringing forth as much information as we can, a couple of surprises, and some updates on what's going on, what may happen very soon, some new information that's come to light on this case. And there is some potentially very, very exciting progress being made. We'll tell you about that in a little bit, so you hang on and listen. But in the meantime, let's be courteous and go to the callers that have been waiting so long. Michael, welcome to Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups, and you're on with Mike Zullo. So, Michael, ask your question of Mike.
Good evening, Pastor Gallups and Lieutenant Zulu. God bless you. I pray for you. Thank you for giving me the time to come on air here and for all you've done. In Illinois and in other states, there are ballot objections. And in Illinois, it was specifically placed in on the record by the Illinois Board of Elections. There's a document ruling on January 27th of 2012 that says the birth certificate attached, referring to Mr. Obama's birth certificate attached as Exhibit A, clearly established the candidate's eligibility for office as a natural-born citizen on January 27th. And then on February 2nd, in their final decision, the Board of Elections stated that the copy of the candidate's birth certificate establishes the candidate's eligibility for office of the President of the United States as a natural-born citizen, as is required by Article 2, Section 1 of the United States Constitution. With that being said, and knowing that you have proven that this is nothing more than a document, what can be done about this? Can criminal complaints be filed with the DA or the AG? That's my question.
Thank you, Michael. God bless you.
Mike, here's the short answer to that. Could criminal complaints be filed? I guess someone could take the document. The document was offered. We have the evidence that, to the contrary, that the document offered was not authentic. Therefore, no evidence was offered to satisfy the requirement or what the court was asking for. But the long and short of it is, to get a prosecutor or an attorney general, you need someone who's willing to take this on. And the problem that we've been running into is the same problem that I just described earlier with this whole disinformation campaign. Ridicule is the number one weapon that keeps people away. It's very difficult to defend yourself against being ridiculed. And you have to find someone who's brave enough to take this on, and that's what we're trying to do. I don't want to give away your thunder, Carl.
Yeah.
But that's what we're trying to do moving forward, and we'll save that for the rest of the show.
Well, absolutely, because we think we have found a handful of people who are brave enough, and we'll talk about that and give away. We'll blow this thunder here in just a few moments. But right now, and thanks, Mike. Right now, let's go back to the phone lines. We're going to take this call, then we're going to take a break, and then we'll take more calls. So we've got a few phone lines open, but they fill up quickly. So you're going to want to call 850-623-1330. 850-623-1330. Sherry, welcome to Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups. You're on with Mike Zullo. Ask your question, Sherry. You want to ask about the investigation?
Thank you, Carl. I'm a Canadian grandmother, a non-politically correct Christian, and I've followed this issue for 4 to 5 years now. I've read tens of thousands of pages, scores of videos, and I concluded long ago that Obama was never born in Hawaii. But having said that, there's been many investigations going on, one of them being the Orly Tates investigation, being the most prominent, working on the Obama birth certificate and fraudulent Social Security number. I'm wondering why you haven't been combining your efforts on this. She, managed to get an interview with SCOTUS on it, and in fact, certain people, key people there, were not even given the evidence she produced, and she subpoenaed them on it. So, how can this be married together, or can it be?
Thank you. That's a brilliant question, Sherry. I know that Mike has been asked that a lot, and I know he's anxious to answer it. So, Mike, you want to answer a question?
Yeah, Sherry, to address your question, the problem that we have here is the majority of Orly Tates' work has been done in the civil arena. We are in the criminal arena. We're in a different court, a different set of standards, different burdens of proof.
Right.
And our burdens are a lot higher. If you go back to the O.J. Simpson trial, he was found innocent in criminal court, but he was convicted in civil court. Lower standard of evidence. We are compelled to have a higher standard of evidence. In other words, we have to go to make an arrest, probable cause, saying we believe a crime has been committed because X, 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 and X. But when it gets adjudicated, it has to be beyond a reasonable doubt.
Right.
So we have a higher standard of evidence. We cannot take our criminal evidence and marry it into a civil trial.
Right.
You just can't do it.
Yeah, and I'm going to say I appreciate what Orly's doing, and I know you do too, Mike, because you've told me that on many occasions. And we applaud her. I mean, we and we're praying for her, and we want her to succeed. But as Mike just said, for fear of being a little redundant, he's working at it from a strictly criminal angle, and so have I actually. And we're trying to advance the criminal case, and we're trying to get VIPs involved in helping us to advance this, and we believe that's getting ready to happen. And again, I keep teasing you with that, and I'm going to let Mike tell you more about that later. But did I speak accurately there, Mike?
You did. If I could just go, one step further.
Sure.
Going into or advancing a criminal case, I want people to understand from the position of Sheriff Arpaio, the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, and myself, we are dealing with a fraudulent document. We are not here, nor have I been commissioned to address natural-born citizen or anything else.
Right.
We know we have a document. Now, once that document, which I do believe could never be brought into a courtroom and viewed as an authentic document, it will never survive the scrutiny of a judicial process.
Right. It
could never be utilized in any courtroom in its present form. That being said, once that document has been declared as such, then the gates are going to be open for all those other questions.
Right, yeah.
But this document has to be brought on trial. That's what has to happen.
Right, because the two main questions, once the document is brought on trial, and the trial determines that the document is in fact fraudulent, then the two next questions are, number one, who produced it, because they've committed a horrendous crime against the American public, and number two, Why did they produce it? Does the man not have a valid birth certificate? And there's where we get to the possible birther issue. But right now, you're dealing with the criminal case of a fabricated document of the man sitting in the Commander-in-Chief's chair, correct?
That's correct. That's all we are looking at.
Okay, fantastic. Folks, let's do this. We're going to take a quick time out. We're going to come back. We've got your phone calls. The phone lines keep getting jammed. We're proud of that.